Hi, welcome back to the Mandarin Blueprint Podcast, episode 165. So you would have noticed that we missed a week, and that is a permanent situation now. We're now doing the podcast every 2 weeks. And for the simple reason is that my grammar has definitely not improved in these last 2 weeks. So for one simple reason, which is, we are focusing on other stuff. We're focusing on creating new course content, figuring out new ways of getting the course to new people. And the podcast, although it's very useful and it's definitely something we're not ever going to get rid of completely, it's something that we're going to start cutting down on a little bit. So I had a kind of an interesting change in the last couple of weeks, which was I've decided to level up my own Chinese. I'm very excited about it. It's actually been really awesome. The last week, I've been focusing an extra 2 hours at least, between 2 and 3 hours a day, on immersing myself in pretty much purely Chinese audio, and for a few reasons. So we're recommended stuff by our students a lot. We're sent links all the time, and I was sent a link ages ago in the community forum, part of our course. If you're on the course, Mandarin Blueprint Method, then you get access to this exclusive forum. And someone shared a video with Matt versus Japan and What I've Learned, which are two YouTubers that I follow personally. So I eventually got around to watching it. And it essentially inspired me to, because I'd say for how long exactly, I don't know, but at least a couple of years, I've kind of let myself plateau. I was like, I'm good enough at Chinese, and I'm going to either focus on other languages, originally I was going to focus on Spanish or something like that, but then I was like, no, I'm going to focus on growing Mandarin Blueprint. I'm going to put all my effort and my time into doing that. So what I did, and because I've got a young child, he's 19 months now, I was like, well, I'm going to have to get up early and I'm going to focus on my business. And I put every spare second I had into learning about all kinds of different things that would help my business, learning about sales and marketing, learning about, how to make better videos, how to make better content, all this sort of stuff. And it's going really well, and it's definitely helped. But after watching that video, I realized that my goals with Chinese need to be aligned with my business. So I saw learning Chinese as something separate from developing Mandarin Blueprint, but it's not. It's completely combined. If I get, I'm already very good at Chinese, but if I get really super good at Chinese, then it will inspire people more. It will allow me to create more content with Phil, and it'll just make me feel better as well. Just make me feel awesome. So how am I improving my Chinese? What am I doing in those 2 hours? Well, I'm immersing myself in audio content that I enjoy, that I can understand, right? So, and I can, with enough effort and focus, I can understand pretty much any Chinese, but I need it to be enjoyable as well, because I'm going to try and do it for 2-3 hours a day. It needs to be fun and I can't wait to listen to it kind of thing. So I started started diving into podcasts again, like real native podcasts. And I found a few that are just fantastic. And I've just been, as soon as I wake up at 4:30 in the morning, by the way. As soon as I wake up, I go to the gym for about an hour and a half. Thank goodness there's a hotel nearby that has a gym that they let me clock in early and let me turn the lights on and stuff like that. Which is very lucky considering I'm in Darci, which is a tiny place relative to other cities. So I'm very lucky to have that near me. So instead of using that hour and a half to listen to business or sales or marketing audiobooks, I now listen to Chinese purely, and I do it actively, which means as actively as I possibly can. It's like sort of between active and passive. So I've got it on and I'm focused from 4:40 in the morning until about 6 in the morning, and then I get to work, and then I work until my wife and my kid wake up, which is usually around 8-ish. So that gives me a couple of hours there. I drop my kid off at school, just down the road. Yeah, not school. It's just like a couple of hours, like a little play group that he goes to just down the road. And then I work 9 to 12 and pretty much work actually throughout the day, except often I'll time box. So I'll time box like 30 minutes at a time, and I'll do writing, I'll do whatever I need to do. And then I'll have 5 minutes off. Now, during those 5 minutes, guess what I'm doing? I'm listening to Chinese. I'm going back to the way I used to do it back when I was really super obsessed with improving my Chinese skill, and before I sort of plateaued out a little bit. You know, whenever I have a shower, right, which is like, again, another 5 minutes, that's what I'm doing. Whenever I walk somewhere and I'm not with my wife and kid, like I don't listen to stuff when I'm with them, okay, because it's just kind of, well, first of all, it's very rude, right, to do that, and it's just not cool, in my opinion. And so, but, you know, I'll always have my little earbuds with me. This is why I use these are really cheap, by the way. Like, this costs literally like $12 or something for two, and they actually work quite well. It's Taobao, China. So I'll always have one in my pocket, and it's always kind of either connected or very easily connected to my phone at any time. So even if I'm with my wife and kid, if we separate for some reason, like the other day, right, we were walking together, it was my day off, and I spend pretty much I have, you know, now 1 day off. I used to have 2 days off, but I have 1 day off a week now, and I spend it completely with them. And I don't try and sneak off and do my own thing and stuff like that, unless, you know, George is asleep. In which case, yeah, I'll be listening to Chinese for a couple of hours. So, but generally, I'll always have it on me. So, say like we were walking together on my day off, and the other day I've actually made a video about it that I might share with you guys. It's just really short, simple video, just like, hey guys, I'm just buying a jianbing. Right, I was just buying a jianbing with my wife, and we were about to walk to the coffee shop together, but she was like, look, I can't wait for the jianbing, I really need to pee. So she went off with George, and that gave me, like, while she walked there whilst I was waiting for the jianbing, you know, and I had those 10 minutes, so I immersed myself. I listened to my podcast, and of course, with these apps that you have, like I use Himalaya. Himalaya is fantastic. It's got all the podcasts, audiobooks, even like audio from TV shows, like sort of not like ripped from TV shows, but like, you know, it's audio based. It's like a TV show audiobook, you could say. I don't know what the translation would be. But, you know, I stick on whatever I was listening to 10 minutes, and I focus active listening as much as I can. And that's generally what I do. And then now, so whenever I have gaps in my day, you know, I'll be honest, sometimes I'm a little bit naughty. Sometimes, like, if I'm with my kid and he's just sort of playing by himself, he's just like, but I'm just watching him, then I will sneak a few minutes in as well. But I shouldn't really do that. You know, but generally, anytime I'm walking anywhere on my own and I have a few minutes, and these will build up. So what I'm basically saying by this, I'm trying to also inspire you guys, because I was inspired by this video, and Matt and Ethan, his partner, his business partner, they work together with this project called Refold.la. And I looked through the whole thing, and I was just like really happy to see it, because it's essentially like a lot of the stuff that we say in our course as well. Like, it's all because it's based off a lot of research, like from all these different linguistic professors, other polyglots, and Katsumoto, like all Japanese all the time. I could see that it's like pieced together from lots of things, as well as these two guys' expertise, extensive experience actually applying these various methods, their own innovations, and I can see that they've done a lot of things with it. And it was fantastic to read, because there was about 10%, 20% of stuff in there that was like, oh, that's interesting. Like I haven't heard of before at all, or like it was phrased in a different way, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. And it was like a step-by-step layered process to learn any language through pretty much purely immersion. And I think, you know, I just thought I was just really inspired by it. I actually learned quite a bit from it as well. And I was like, I'm going to apply this to my own life, and I'm going to also maybe even use it, sort of combine it in some way with how we use Mandarin Blueprint, because Mandarin Blueprint is all about building the building blocks, like giving you the tools you need to be able to immerse yourself. And we are always talking about listening immersion, but it's like pieced here and there. It's not like you need to start listening to this content now in this way. Here's how you can fit it into your schedule, which is like, it's not like specifically laid out like that. So I was thinking, this would be our next big move. This big development is like guiding people on how to actually immerse themselves fully, because unfortunately, Chinese, Japanese, if you're an English speaker, you're trying to learn one of these languages. The reason why it takes so long is A, the writing system, and B, because the languages are genuinely very different from English, right? So the more different a language is from your own language, the longer it takes to learn. So there is just, there is a certain amount of immersion that you need. And I think, 2-3 hours a day for like 5 years is probably what you'd need to be like awesome at Chinese, okay, or Japanese, I guess. But I'm not going to speak about Japanese, so I know nothing about that language. And so, or if you want to, and that includes passive and active, I guess, but I'm at the point in my level where I can just listen for a couple of hours, 2-3 hours a day for a year or so, and I'll notice some big improvements. Like I'll get out of that sort of upper intermediate advanced to sort of more like closer to native level pretty relatively soon, I think, if I really focus on this. And yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to share that sort of development with you guys, and I hope it inspires you to invest in that a little bit more, especially if you're on our course, because if you combine Mandarin Blueprint with Immersion, and we do provide, of course, a lot of content for Immersion, like audio sentences and things like that, but Immersion in native content is sort of the way forward. It's like what we are is a big sort of stepping stone, and we make the ability for active immersion in native content way quicker and way easier to get to that point, right? Like, so before you'd have to spend like 6 months just learning characters, right? And then another bunch of months like sort of gradually learning to read, I should mention as well, like reading and listening, like what's the sort of difference? I'll briefly mention that before I jump into these comments here. So you might be wondering, well, is it reading immersion or is it listening immersion? Like, because I just talked about doing listening immersion, right? And there's a balance that I think you need to strike. But essentially, reading immersion is great for building vocabulary, and that's something that I've always done every single day. I've always listened or watched a little bit of Chinese every day, but I've mainly done reading, like for at least half an hour every day. And that's great for developing vocabulary, but if you want to speak like a native speaker and activate all this vocabulary that you're building up through speaking practice later on, you need to listen. You need to listen a ton, okay? And that's it really. So like reading is more like, it's kind of like something that we have over children as well. So like children, they develop their language skills purely through listening, but then they develop reading later. But we can actually sort of hack that a little bit. We can actually learn faster than children by reading and listening at the same time. So we get that fluency, that native sort of, we can imitate the way native speakers really speak. And of course, it solidifies what you learn from reading. They're sort of symbiotic, I think is the word, right? The synergistic, they sort of push each other along if you can do both at the same time. So that's the ideal situation. That's why we're always so adamant about reading. That's why we base pretty much our entire course, the Mandarin Blueprint Method, around reading. So if you're listening to this huge diatribe about immersion and you want to basically become awesome at Chinese in a relatively short amount of time, actually good at Chinese, where people are like, whoa, like native speakers, like that guy's really good. Like I can actually understand everything he's saying. He understands everything I'm saying. And if you want to feel that feeling, like the other day I had someone say I had perfect Chinese, which is not true at all. But I said a few things and I responded to a few questions so like a native, because I had so much immersion over my time learning, that they said that phrase to me and it made me feel incredible, right? If you want that feeling and you want that in a relatively short amount of time, I'm talking like instead of like 5-10 years, you want that in like 2-3 years. If you want that, then check out mandarinblueprint.com and also you can start a 14-day free trial, by the way. And also keep your eyes out, because when I say I'm inspired, I'm not just inspired to improve my own Chinese. That's like a small part of it. What I'm really excited about is creating something new, not necessarily developing the Mandarin Blueprint Method further, but maybe creating a separate project that's, of course, under the same umbrella. We're still Mandarin Blueprint, but just creating like a different course, or maybe a who knows, maybe even a more expensive, exclusive monthly thing where we guide people on immersion. Because obviously, if I go say like to you guys, you're beginners or intermediates, like I said, go and immerse yourself in native content. You've got a lot of work ahead of you. So we're now currently brainstorming ideas to maybe make that process a lot easier. And that, I think that's going to be our next big project. We'll see. I'm not making any promises yet. I'm certainly not announcing anything yet. But now that we've built the course out to 3,000 characters and 11,000 words, and we pretty much don't need to build it out anymore. The skeleton is done, right? It's time to start building out the flesh. And I say, maybe I should use a different analogy because that's kind of weird. We built a concrete house. We built a solid frame, solid foundation, potential to be absolutely gorgeous mansion. That's what the Mandarin Blueprint Method is. But it's essentially, you walk in, it's just white painted walls, just a concrete block. It's beautifully designed. It's not going anywhere for hundreds of years. It's solid, but it's not a home yet. You know, you can learn to read but you can't consume native content right now yet. At least, well, you can. I've phrased that wrong, but we don't directly say, hey, you've unlocked this level, now you can go watch this episode of Peppa Pig or something like that, you know. So I think what we want to start moving towards now is making this house that you build with us a home, giving it color, giving it furniture, giving it a back garden where your kids can play, this sort of thing. So I hope that makes a bit more sense. It's a bit less weird, the skeleton flesh analogy. I'm really excited, and I feel like I do when we first released it a couple of years ago. I'm like, this is like the next thing. I think this is the next thing that's going to make people's lives even better and easier with learning this language. So very exciting. Phil's probably going to be mad at me because we literally just started brainstorming this idea and now I'm like announcing it to everyone. I always do that. But yeah, we'll stay tuned. That's all I'll say. And do you see how cool it is? And only having a podcast every 2 weeks, I get genuinely excited to tell you about all these new things and share all these cool ideas with you. So let's jump into the first comment here. And it's a very positive start to the podcast. We just had someone called Cleary send us a really nice email who she recently signed up for lifetime membership. Now, this is available only by request and only to certain very, very tiny amount of people on our list, people that have already got a subscription and they're just, we can upgrade them just so they don't have to worry about that money coming out every month or every year. And Cleary just went for it and signed up for a lifetime subscription. And she's really excited about it. She says, OMG Luke and Phil, with how many? 5, I believe, exclamation marks. I did it. I spent money on my little tiny idea of being able to speak Mandarin. People think I'm crazy. The few that I dare to tell. Thanks for your support and encouragement through yours and Phil's vids, and thanks to everyone that has supported both of you to create such a wonderful program. Yay, it's 5 a.m. here and I'm awake to study Mandarin. Regards, Yen Cleary. Don't know why I didn't see that first name there. Yen is her name. Well done, Yen. Well done. And I just want to address that because that's exactly what happened to me. When I announced my crazy little idea of becoming fluent in Chinese in 2 years, I said I'll become fluent in Chinese in 2 years. Now, there are levels to fluency, as many of you know, right? So I'm not saying I was native fluent after 2 years, but I was certainly fluent after 2 years. Like at least I could have fluent conversations about most things, maybe not ancient Russian architecture, but then again, I can't really do that in English either. So, I remember specifically 3 different people. Well, as soon as I told them this, and they were people that 2 of them were just, people that like acquaintances. We were just chatting, where are you off to? Oh, I'm going to go to China. So why are you going to China? It's like, I've decided I want to learn Chinese. That's my goal. I want to be fluent in 2 years. And I remember this girl was, well, that's just not going to happen, is it? Like, she looked at me and she was like, that's just not going to happen. No, that's just not possible. And I was like, okay. Another guy, when I was in Vietnam, said the same thing to him. I was literally just about to go to China. He's like, I was like, I'm going to come fluent into, and he literally, before I even finished the sentence, he was like, no, you're not. And another guy, it just literally met him at this really terrible job that I had for like a day. I was like, oh, I'm going to go, after university, I'm going to go to China. And he said, well, what's the point in that? This guy was 18, by the way. And he had literally had the mindset of like I don't know, just a 55-year-old, like, just failure. I don't know. Like, he just had no spark whatsoever for life, you know? It was really, and he was, yeah. So you'll get that because people will project their own beliefs onto you, or at least beliefs what's not possible, what is possible. You just need to ignore it. I'm really not that kind of person that's like, yeah, you can do it. Whatever you want to do in life, you can do it. Don't know why I put American accent on there, but I think that says a lot. But that I don't think is true. Like, you can't do anything you want. Like, I'll never be an NBA star, right? It's just not going to happen. But there are certain things that you certainly can do with enough time and focus, right? So, and learning Chinese to fluency, so like impressive, ridiculous levels of fluency is possible. So that's one of the things that is possible. It's not limited by your physicality. It's limited by where you spend your time. Physicality. I don't even know if that's a word. So yeah, well done, Yen. Seriously. And with that attitude, if you put in time every day, I'd say 1 hour a day at the Mandarin Blueprint Method course and another hour at least a day of immersion of some kind, listening or watching or reading Chinese, that 2 hours a day, preferably maybe even 3 hours a day, you could get insane results within just a year or two. Okay. Now, if you could put in like 6 to 8 hours, I'm very jealous of those people that have that time. But if you could put in 6 to 8 hours a day, you could reach an insane level of fluency in way less than a year, right? I wouldn't say insane levels of fluency, but like you could reach complete, like you could be reading Chinese novels in 12 months. You could be having fluent conversations in 6 to 12 months, depending on what you're doing. And then so there's a lot possible there. That's all I'll say for now. Next is Dave on, it's a word for zhi or zhi, depending on how it's pronounced. So he says, when reading Chinese characters, how do you know which one to use? The appearance of the character for zhi doesn't change in the sentences above, even though the tone does. See, this is just, tone, 多音字, right? Multiple characters with multiple pronunciations that exists, and it's an example of why, reading immersion, like just reading the language and listening to the language is so important. And this is another reason why reading and listening together is important, because you'll hear, so if you said 一只猫, like a cat, you'll hear the first tone, 一只. But if you say something like 只有300块, or 只有300块, like 只有, like it's a third tone, right? So that's only, that's that meaning. So it's incredibly different meanings. You'll have no problem discerning that through listening, but that's why it's good to attach the characters to the sounds. So it's not just good, it's imperative if you want high-level Chinese. And that's something, in terms of reading, you'll get completely used to. It will feel like nothing very soon. If you could keep reading, it will feel like, of course this is first tone. You wouldn't even have to think about it, providing you've got a lot of listening immersion, listening practice as well, which you do get through the course, right? So everything that we provide for you, nothing is purely reading, ever. It's always got very high quality native male and female audio, like studio recorded, for every sentence, every paragraph, every story that you unlock, because we know how important that attachment is, right? But if you keep consuming it, that won't be an issue, right? And 20% of all characters, according to some stat that I've heard that I'm not going to verify because I'm too lazy, but like 20%, let's say, of like all common characters, like top 3,000 characters, have multiple definitions. Most of them have multiple definitions, multiple pronunciations. A lot of times they're completely different as well. Not just different tone, different spelling, everything. So don't worry about it, is the thing. If you keep consuming the language, all these little mysteries will not be mysteries anymore. All right, now, so that goes for grammar as well. But it's nice to have grammar explanations, and they do help. Genuinely, grammar does, like being explained to you does help. It helps you consciously wrap your head around something before you're subconsciously ready. But it's not 100% necessary, even that, right? So don't worry about that, mate. You'll get there. I know that's a frustrating piece of advice because it's just kind of, it sounds wishy-washy, right? It sounds like I'm just not being bothered to help you properly. But that's literally the advice. That's literally it. Just keep listening. And it, unfortunately, with acquisition, real acquisition of the language, you can't just tick a box and say, oh, I've finished that, I now know that. It happens silently and subconsciously. One day it just clicks, and then you're practicing with your tutor or you're having a chat in your target language, and it just comes out perfectly. Yeah, and that's how you know you know it. Okay, so just trust us, trust the process. Will on tone change rules. He says, yes, when I'm in Chinatown, the native speakers just flow in their talk. Sometimes I know what they're saying, but it still sounds different from expected. That's really the next level, being able to speak with that flow. And again, the only way to really, truly get that is through listening immersion. And of course, speaking practice, that's essential, but it's like 80-90% immersion and 10-20% speaking on writing practice. Writing is really good as well, by the way. Really good, but it's not your priority. Your highest priority at like beginner, intermediate, sort of upper intermediate, anywhere in there really, is to listen and watch and read as much as you possibly can to get that flow, especially with listening. That's the key thing. And believe it or not, you'll get there. And also there, again, just like there are ways of like getting hacks to this, like explaining tone change rules, like the theory, and explaining grammar points. There's also little hacks to improve your speaking as well. I'll give you a couple right now. Use filler words. So use 那个这个就是那个这个就是 right, use those three. They're probably the most common. 然后呢，哎，怎么说呢？他这个那个人是啊，这个 just throw them in, just throw them in loads. It's fine, and rely on them less and less as your vocabulary and your flow improves. Right, so that's probably the biggest tip for you. Just try that out, and that should work a treat as like a training wheels, not training wheels. I don't know, little head start to getting that flow. The next one here is John CRAMER. He says, wow, I can't believe I've come this far already. And he's only at the end of phase 1. So that's just 6 levels, essentially. And he's, of course, finished pronunciation mastery. So I'm so glad you got that attitude, John, because you've really just scratched the surface. And I don't mean that to mean like you've got this huge mountain to climb, you'll never get there. The opposite of that. I mean, you've got so many wins and successes ahead of you, right? You just... This feeling that you've got, you're going to be feeling that over and over again for the next several months, several years, however long you decide to stay with us and stay with Chinese. So I'm really happy for you. Keep that up. Next is Christopher Dolman on final character. Oh, well done. Yeah, so there's 1,564 characters in the, well, not anymore. Sorry, Christopher. We've now doubled that. But essentially we will be doubling it publicly very, very, very soon. But we're just working out some kinks of this. But currently, yes, the current version at the time of making this podcast, it goes up to 1,564 characters. Soon it'll be 3,050. There's a lot there. But yes, final character made it. Hard to believe, really. Now I'm going to go back to boost the vocab and immerse myself in the stories. Thanks, Phil and Luke. You're right. Turn up every day. Change it up if you're not enjoying it. Don't let the short game get in the way of the long game, and stop writing down those scenes. Oh, it's so good to hear that. Thank you so much, Christopher, for listening to us and trusting us. And, yes, that's it. That is it. Turn up every day. Change it up if you're not enjoying it. I'm just going to say that one more time. Turn up every day. Change it up if you're not enjoying it. Don't let the short game get in the way of the long game. And stop writing down those scenes. Right. So the final one is kind of very specific to us, but the other 3 points there are vital to improving in any skill, really, but especially with this course and with Mandarin. So when it comes to immersion, when it comes to, there's certain things that you can't drop, right? Like we have the best way of learning how to read, right? So learning characters, even learning words and seeing those words in context, using flashcards and things like that. In terms of learning a lot of stuff very, very quickly, there's nothing better than Mandarin Blueprint Method. I can say that with confidence. But so you can't just be like, oh, I'm bored of this character, I'm not going to learn this character. No, you need to switch up how you're learning it, not the actual character itself. But there's a lot of stuff like when it comes to learning, reviewing sentence cards, flashcards, or consuming a podcast, or even consuming one of the big stories that we show you, that you unlock in our course. If it's the bigger piece of content, guess what? There's billions and billions of terabytes of content out there on the internet that you can consume. Of course, it becomes more accessible the better you get, hence why characters are avoidable. But yes, if you're not enjoying something, that's one of the key pillars of your consistency, and consistency is one of the key pillars of your general progress and ability to achieve your goals in Chinese. So you need to, turn up every day is number one. You're not going to turn up every day if you don't enjoy it. So fantastic. Well done. So next up here is Micaela on 完美, perfect. So that's what 完美 means, which literally means completed beauty if you break down the characters. That's just great, isn't it? Completed beauty is perfection. So there's a sentence here that sort of she had a question about, which is, so let's look at the sentence first, and I'll just translate it. So, 那如果你还是觉得不完美，你又要写一次吗? So if you think it's still not perfect, are you going to write it again? So she says, based on the grammar point lesson that follows, I think we could replace 又 here with 在 as in again. So would it be correct to say that both 又 and 在 can be used for present and future, but only 又 can be used for the past? Yes. In fact, 在 is used mainly for the future, things that haven't happened. Yeah, so in fact, I believe exclusively for the future. And only 又 can be used in the past. So like I remember I got a very distinct memory of 又 when I was living with my now wife. It was me, her, and two other friends. One of those friends actually is currently my son's kindergarten teacher. But anyway, we were living together, and I was just a bit of a waster. I'd lose everything, and I'd lose my socks, and I'd steal the guy's socks that I was living with. I just remember hearing this one day, just hearing this really loud shout, like, Luke, 又偷了我的袜子. Luke stole my socks again, right? So again, that's how it's like cemented in my mind. 又偷了我的袜子. It's like, yes, that's past tense for sure. And I bought him like 10 pairs, and I laid them very softly and gently on his bed, and he was very moved. So there was a happy ending to that. But yes, this is a really long, pointless way of saying, yes, you're correct. So here's a couple of examples. So 在, again, I always just get these from Pleco. And I rewrote your sentence to include 在 instead. You cannot just replace it. You cannot just say, for example, so look at the second half of your sentence where it says 你又要写一次吗? You can't just say 你再要写一次吗? You can't do that. 再 doesn't work like that. You'd have to switch it around. You have to say 你要再写一次吗? Okay, that's just how it works. Don't ask me why. That's just the language. Okay, so but yes, you're correct. Here's just a couple of example sentences that cement the idea of what we're talking about. How 在 is used for the future, and 又 is used for the past generally. Okay, so 要是再下雨，那还得改日子。那还得改日。那 is like therefore in that case. It's often used to use in that way. If it rains again, the date will have to be changed. 还得改日子. 得 is must, and 改日子 is day or the date. 改 is to change. 改日子 is change the date. And then the second sentence here, 我叫他别再来. I told him not to come again. 可他又来了. Isn't that cool? That says both of them, doesn't it? So I told him not to come, which is, I don't think it's technically future. My English grammar is not the best. 可他又来了. 可他又来了. So that's the past, isn't it? 又来了. 又 is also not necessarily just the past. It's also just like In this case, it is to say again in the past, but it's also used to be like, it's really like to exaggerate something. So for example, again, this is why immersion is so important in content that engages you, okay? I remember a Chinese pod episode. Now, Chinese pod, there's not native content, so you don't want to rely on it forever, but I think it's a fantastic stepping stone. It's basically what we offer, but like they've just obviously they were there first, and they've been doing it for 15, 20 years, and they've just got so much content, like thousands of lessons, like 4,000 lessons of just like these little dialogues, and a lot of them are very interesting and very funny and stuff like this. So they sort of stick in your brain because of that, and that's why John Paston originally designed it that way, I believe, or not John Paston. There was a guy before him. I've forgotten his name. Sorry, I'll just give John all of the credit. They were having had a car accident or something like that, or they had some sort of disagreement, and there was this guy saying, 马路又不是你的. 马路 is the road, and 又不是. So if you say 马路不是你的, like it's literally just saying the road is not yours. It's kind of just factual, right? But if you say 马路又不是你的, like add the 又 in there, it's like saying it's really not yours. Like it's adding that sort of emotional content to it. Anyway, right, speaking of 又, right, 又出错了, like made another mistake, again, past tense. 说了又说, say something over and over again. And so the other way is indicating an addition to a given scope. This is Pleco, how that has it. So it's also in addition to. So this is quite a little bit more advanced, as in less common, but still you'll hear it quite a bit. 除了工资, 他又挣了不少外快. 外快 is a cool way of saying extra income. Very common sort of a colloquial term as well as just standard Chinese. So 又挣了不少外快. 除了工资, 他又, so 又 here is like additional. 他又要了一份饭菜. He asked for a second helping of food. So again, past. All right, so I hope that helped to sort of solidify that. Again, keep listening, keep reading, and this will not only be solidified consciously, but also subconsciously, and it will just come out of your mouth and you'll be able to produce it. All right, so that's all the general comments and emails we had over the last week or two. So let's move on to the final section of this podcast, which is just all about vocab living links. So some comments people send in of great ideas of ways that we can learn Mandarin words, compound words, i.e. words made up of more than one character, by thinking of connections, but creating what we call living links. Right? So creating a link based on your own life experience to these words. Okay, so and then of course when you've done that, when you made that living link, often that's enough if you're a high enough level. But if you want to create flashcards out of it, and if you're a lower level, you can do that as well, and you can find an image related to your living link. And put it in the flashcards, and it really helps to cement when you're like usually in the earlier stages of learning. Okay, when you're like between like 0 and 1,500 words, this is really good. Then once you get past that sort of into our sort of intermediate course, then you can start directly just from reviewing sentence flashcards. You don't have to review the individual vocabulary individually using individual, say that 3 times, flashcards, like separated. So you can just basically create your mnemonic for this compound word, but then just put the image related to that mnemonic into the sentence which you're using to acquire that word. So it's more about acquisition. So when you're below sort of 1,000 words, 1,500 words, it's more about building the foundation so that you have the ability to read sentences. Okay, so it's like you can't really skip that step when it comes to Chinese. So once you get sort of past sort of 4,000 or 5,000 words though, like past our intermediate course and you're into sort of more advanced, you can largely, I think, just make the odd sentence flashcard, but mainly just rely on pure immersion and pure reading, and occasionally maybe put a note to help you out. I still do this little technique a lot, actually, when I see a new word. I create, or especially with Chengyu, like made up of 4 characters or entire phrases, I just create a mental image in my mind that relates to the characters, and that's usually enough. Again, sometimes I'll forget it, but if you're constantly immersing yourself, it's a natural SRS system. So these words will pop up again and refresh your memory. And if you just, making these little mental living links as you're learning the words just helps speed up that process and make it easier to retrieve, all right? So those are basically the three main stages that you go through regarding this. Anyway, all right, let's jump in. So Annette Bicknell on Vocab Unlocked for fu, so 衣服 and 说服 or 说服, it's also pronounced like that as well. And I'm sure your immediate question is, which one is more common, 说服 or 说服? In my experience, it's 说服. But both, no, it's not really 说服. I guess it's 50-50 for me. I don't know, right? This is the answer. But let's see so 说服, let's go with 说服, right? 说服 is to persuade. For that, and let's just come up with a connection for 12 Angry Men. I watched that relatively recently. It's a fantastic film, obviously one of the classics. Most people have probably seen it if you're like a film lover. And it's all about a jury of 12 men, and women, I believe, like just talking to each other and trying to come to an agreement, basically, about if they're guilty or not guilty. And so just a geniusly written film. So that's a great example. But I would like some sort of, because these characters aren't especially obvious in their connection to their final meaning, right? And even if, by the way, you don't have to actually know the original idea behind why these characters were chosen, but just come up with a connection of some kind. So 说 is obviously to speak. So that's related directly to persuade, so that's pretty clear. But 服 that has a few different meanings. It does mean clothing, but it also, let's check. It also means, of course, to take medicine. It's like the formal way of saying to take medicine. To serve, 服兵役, right? So yeah, it's kind of like, obey, admit. So I like that definition. A good example of a good thing to do if you're not sure about these connections, and I highly recommend, especially if you're a lower level or any level really, but especially lower level, you do look at the actual characters and be like, okay, if it's not immediately obvious, okay. So for example, the word 常常 means often, and both 常 means both characters are duplicates, they mean often, right? So the final word means often. You don't need to worry about looking at the characters for that. But for this one, it's good to know. So a good way of doing this is to look up any of the characters that aren't obviously connected to the final meaning. Like 服 is not obviously connected to the meaning because it has multiple meanings that are completely different, right? So one, it means taking medicine, it means clothing, it means to obey, right? So look it up like I've just done here and think, which one of these definitions sort of connects most to the final definition of this compound word, and then just do it based on that. So literally to speak until someone is convinced or obeys you. All right, so I think of, and that immediately makes me think of like a dictator, like brainwashing the masses into obeying him and thinking he's amazing. So that's the ultimate persuasion, right? From being brainwashed since you were a kid. So that's pretty intense, I know, but that's just the connection that my brain made. So 说服 is like, that's what I consider to be pretty good. And 衣服 is like, well, 衣 means clothing and 服 means also clothing, right? So that just makes sense, right? But you could also use the definition of obey as well. So actually, no, I can't. I was hoping something would just come to my mind there, like 衣 and 服, so clothing, obey means clothing. I guess your clothes have to obey you. They can't just fall off randomly. They have to obey the laws of physics. That could work. All right, I'm going off the rails here. But I think the first one was really good, so just use that. Next, Ceri Woods on Vocab Unlocked for Wang. 上网, 网上, and 网友. These are all so obvious. If you know Chinese grammar, 网上 means on the wang, and 上网 means to 上网, is more the verb, right? Just makes sense. 网友 is literally internet buddy. All right, so and net wang means net, like as in internet, right? So it's all just so clearly done. Just finding an image here will be enough if you need one. Fabulous. On net and net on. That's not confusing at all. Again, Ceri. No, Ceri, right? Sorry, I believe it's Ceri. That does become really obvious once you've had a bit of immersion in the language and that sort of pattern of how words are formed. It's how the larger Chinese grammar also functions. 在这个事情上, right? So on this point, on this topic, that 上 is that's how the grammar works. Or 上桌子, like get on the table, 上桌, or you get the point. So these are like mini sentences. These words, like a microcosm of the larger Chinese grammar. And that's very simple, relatively simple grammar as well. Once that clicks, these words will click too. And they won't be confusing. For 上网, I used a picture of someone on a surfboard on internet icons. And for 网上, the icon for online looks like a net that's on the world. To try and remember which character comes first in each word. On the net on the world. Not bad at all. I really like that. Something simple like that will be fine for such obviously structured compound words. And next here is Melissa. Vocab Unlocked for 包, 面包. All right, so this is a really simple word, right? But if you think about it, 面包, like it's not that direct a link. It's not like, oh yeah, obviously that's bread. Literally noodle wrap, right? Or noodle bag or packaged. Or 面粉, right? 面is 面粉, right? Flour pack. So so bread is like flour packaged, if you like. That's sort of one way. Like if you imagine a standard loaf of bread. I love bread with a thick, chewy crust. 面 has a meaning of surface. This is much better than what I just said, I think. Right? So the crust of a loaf of bread is the surface wrapping up the rest of it. So it's kind of similar to what I said. So the crust is the surface wrapping up the rest of it. And you've got the wrapping up 包 point there as well. Well done. Yeah, definitely better than mine. All right, so go with Melissa's. So next is Mirko on Vocab Unlocked for 听. So we've got lots here. We've got 好听, 听力, 听见, 听话, 听说, 听说, right? So let's have a look at what Mirko's got. In the movie Amélie, Le fabuleux destin d'Amélie Poulain. All right, that's my French from school. There is this scene where Amélie tells the blind man what is going on around him, making him have this big enlightened smile. I think this is a great representation of 听见. Fantastic, yes. All of these actually. Let me just have a look. 好听, right? Really simple, obvious structure. There's nothing mysterious about the way these characters are arranged or chosen. 听力, literally listening power, is how good is your listening skill. 听见, right? We've got that one already. I think that's a great one. Think of someone hearing something in a very meaningful way. 听话, that's, I guess, the most abstract, but it's still very clear. It means obedient, literally listening to the words, listening to speech of adults. And 听说, that's probably the least obvious, right? So let's go through these. 好听, just something that is very nice to listen to, right? Just choose your favorite band or like classical music or like just someone listening to, I got this image of like a 1940s woman listening to a gramophone or something like that. I don't know why, but that just comes to mind. 听力, listening power. Picture of Superman. There's that scene from that awful Superman movie, which had some cool scenes in it, but it was like that Brandon Routh movie where he's like looking at the earth and he's like listening to just all the sounds of the earth. It's pretty cool. And then he goes and hears one that he likes and then he goes and saves that person. Get a picture of that. 听见, we've already got. 听话, literally just like I'd get a dog like sitting down, being a good boy. Or a child being very well behaved, using their knife and fork, very ladylike or gentlemanly like. And then finally, 听说, like that 听说 means 我听说. It's literally I heard speaking, which means I've heard. Like as in, I heard that you didn't go to school the other day. 我听说, that's how sort of hearing rumors kind of, or hearsay. It's just so obvious, isn't it? So just get like two people gossiping, like obviously gossiping, and that'd be more than enough. And everything else, you don't have to worry about, just move on. Fantastic. So well done, Mirko. Next is Sriram. Almost certainly pronounced that wrong. So next is Swan. So Sriram with Swan. So 总算打算. So he said, I thought of Dr. MLK Jr.'s speech, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty we are free at last. But the online translation I saw translates as 终于自由啦. So finally free, basically. Translation here. So you also got a link to the translation. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate adding links that help people out like that. And that's also very interesting. Yeah, don't worry about it if it's just 终于 and 自由. Because sorry, 终于 and 总算, they're very similar. 终于 is just way more common. So 总算 is basically more like, it's got more of that in it. 终于 is more sort of general. It's also slightly more formal, I suppose. But they're both essentially interchangeable, okay? So you can use that 终于自由啦 and for 总算, right? So you can still use that Dr. Martin Luther King quote. That'll be absolutely fine. And 总算, this is interesting. Like, so 总 means always, right? And 算 means to count, so always counting. So imagine that, right? So imagine that. So a way to connect to that, because that's not obvious. So let's connect to those characters too. So 总, or you could say 总 could also mean 总统, like a leader. Yeah, let's just see it as some sort of leader, right? Counting things. So that, which one connects to finally? The idea of finally, like really agonizing, sort of finally done something. I guess always counting just sort of makes a bit more sense, because like imagine someone really rich counting their money, and the accountant that works for that rich person is like they're like counting up all this money, you see it all piled around him, and he's like he just finished the final dollar, but he feels like he's always counting because it's taking so long to count all this money, you know, something like that would be fine. And the next one we've got 打算. So literally to hit, to hit count. So 打算 means to plan something, or it can mean a plan as well, but I guess it's more often used in the verb form there. So 打算literally means to hit counting. So like hitting an abacus. Let's see here. I can't think of much connection at the moment, just off the top of my head. So hitting, counting. So to hit an abacus or something like that. I know, yeah. So the accountant that we just spoke about, his plan is to break his abacus so that he doesn't have to keep counting all this money. All right. So he's there, got a guy with a picture of an abacus. Maybe you could even find a picture of a broken abacus. And that would be fine. Or you could use a different pronunciation of swan, like because swan is a very common sound. Also in Chinese, it also can be used to describe garlic, right? 打算. So hitting garlic as a way of like that's your plan. So maybe there's a vampire and his plan, his 打算, he 打算s to destroy all the garlic in the entire world by hitting it. All right, so that's not bad off the top of my head, I must say. So that should cover that for you. Darci Mallon on Vocabulary Unlocked for 解, 了解 and 解决. Sherlock Holmes with his magnifying glass for to solve, which is 解决. Yeah, that could work quite well. 解决, and 决 is the idea of like end, ultimate, no more, finished. So it doesn't have that idea of finish there. Maybe you could find a scene where Sherlock Holmes is very satisfied when he's just solved, like from that TV show, the British one, where he's just satisfied he's just solved the case, and he's got that satisfied, smug grin on his face. And for 了解, actually, 了 also means end as well. So kind of similar to 决 in meaning. When 了 is pronounced this way, 了, it means end, right? So literally it means end of 解ing, something like to 解 is to, what is the official pronunciation? I know I've got a feeling of what it is, but 了解, to untie, to undo, to take off, to dissolve, to discharge. to dispel, to explain. So yeah, it just means like the idea of untying a knot, and it's like free, right? So basically figuring something out. So the end of that process means that you understand. So you don't have to figure out, you're not trying to sit there untying this knot anymore. You figured it out, and you've liao the jie. You've ended the figuring out process. Brilliant. So find a picture of something, of someone who's an absolute expert in their field. If like Bill Gates has figured out making money, right? Or something like that. So that's all we have for today. So we'll see you in a couple of weeks. If you had, if anything I said, if it resonated with you, leave a comment, send us an email at contact@mandarinblueprint.com. And most importantly, if you've listened this far, or if you've listened at all, and you haven't tried the Mandarin Blueprint Method yet, and you want to become awesome at Chinese one day, relatively soon compared to everyone else, then you need to go to mandarinblueprint.com and you need to start a 14-day free trial. There's no way, there's no single resource out there that's more effective for true acquisition of Mandarin Chinese. So give it a shot, and thank you for everyone for listening, and I will see you in, well, a month, I guess. Bye-bye.